So first and foremost, Mike, thanks so much for hopping on. How are you doing? Because I know it's been quite a hiatus, right? With finally being back with a live show.
Very, very excited. Everybody's been looking forward to this for a very long time. I know it's been 3 years since our last live shore leave event. It seems like 30 to me since we've seen so many of our friends. So enthusiasm is building for a very, very long time. Everybody has worked very, very hard on our entire committee and staff and helpers, and we're looking to have a very, very special shore leave coming up in just a matter of days from now.
Outstanding, outstanding. So, with that being said, if we were to start and talking about the rewinding the clock back a bit and talking about the emphases, those first couple of years of shore leave, I understand, in doing some research, on you that, you've been around since, from what I understand, shore leave 8. Is that right? So
that's right. I'm not
roughly
really quite sure how you found out about that, but
so
that's
yeah,
right. Shore leave 8
deep.
was my first one. You did
So,
great research. Bravo.
Thank you. So, considering just that longevity of the show and your involvement with it, can you talk a bit further about that? Because I always find it fascinating of a show that is able to sustain that longevity, as you well know, which what we've seen even in the past couple of years with, unfortunately, what's happened with COVID. It's seen a lot of shows come and go, and even with new shows, even without the help of a circumstance like that, they don't last very long. So can you talk a bit about that longevity and some of the interesting things that you have observed from decade to decade, from 8 to now, I guess, 8 to now 42. Wow.
Yep, our third crack at 42. So I guess the 2020 you would say was 41.5. Last year was 41.6.
Right.
And we decided to just keep the number 42 because we never had a chance to pull off 42. Anyway, exactly. Just make sure I understand your question, Brandon. Are you referring to the differences in shore leave over the last 40 years? Or
yeah, like some of the things
that
I would say, I guess it's more of a two-parter. So first, to speak to what you feel, in the time that you've been involved that has, allowed, shore leave to continue that longevity and that consistency over that period of time. And then additionally, as a second part to that, what has been fascinating and from decade to decade of certain things that have changed in that period of time. Because I'm sure of course, a lot of things have remained the same, but there may have been some things, at least in how you guys have done the show, or challenges that you have faced that have been interesting, going in that period of time.
Well, Brandon, shore leave grows and adapts over time, just like anything else. Back when I first started going to shore leave, I wasn't in the committee then. I was just one of the helpers. I was one of the members of the organization, what was called the Star Trek Association of Towson at the time. It is now called the Stat Club of Maryland, by the way. It recently changed its official name, but it was, Star Trek Association of Towson for a very long time, okay, from the start of shore leave's existence. And in those days, people were able to just come to a shore leave, and we would have, say, maybe 1 or 2 actor guests in those days. We would have a few writers. We hadn't really gotten into having science guests yet at that point, not until a number of years later. And basically, strictly being as purely a Star Trek convention, that was our reputation for a long time. But then I noticed as the 80s wore on, and especially as we got into the 90s, you would have these other conventions, not just in our area where shore leave is, but across the eastern seaboard of the United States and across the rest of the country. Other conventions would become, shall we say, more varied in their guest list. They would bring in guests from other shows that were popular at the time. Babylon 5 was incredibly popular back in the 90s, and X-Files was going, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer was going. And then, Farscape came along after some years went by. The incredible popularity of the various Stargate series, so many sometimes I lose track of them all, to be honest. We have guests from all those shows as well. So the variety of our guests became more varied. So that's why we really don't call ourselves strictly a Star Trek convention anymore. I mean, in our heart of hearts, that's the ones that laid the track down, so to speak. That's what we are at our core. But we like to call ourselves a sci-fi and media convention because we like to cover pretty much every gamut of genre. Science fiction, fantasy, not really so much horror. That's kind of a different group. But basically, we like to cover all of that. So there is a small part of me from a personal standpoint that says, oh, well, we should just, stick with the world of Star Trek because that's what started it all. But on the other hand, I realize that people also come to Shore Leave because they want to see and interact with fans from various fan groups from a variety of different kinds of shows. And if you look at our guest list this year, for example, we have quite an eclectic mix from a variety of different shows. And this is something I give our guest relations department and the rest of our committee a tremendous amount of credit for. I can't take any credit for it myself. I'm just the publicity guy who likes to tell people about it. But I didn't do any of the hard work like they actually did. So it's something that I'm very, very proud of, that to be quite candid, a very small scale, purely voluntary, fan run and operated convention such as ours is able to offer this variety of guests and is able to offer as much programming as we do in comparison to what one would expect in a lot of other, I don't know if you would want to call them professional conventions or large national or international conventions that might draw, say, 30, 40, 50, 75,000 people at once.
So I guess what I'll pick up with is asking, unless anyone's been living under a rock, we know that the past few years have been, a trying and a difficult one. So
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, in considering that, there have been, I know in speaking with a lot of other showrunners, there have been things that, have been put in place, during that time when a lot of the shows have gone virtual. And even now that things are going back to quote unquote normal, or as normal as it can be, there's still some things that are being planned to use going forward. So even with those prior shows that you have done virtually, have there been some components or things within those past few years of not doing a live show that you still intend to incorporate going forward with this year's show?
Well, Brandon, I can only speak to what we're doing this year. I can't really speak to the future. Who's to really say what the new normal is going to be? Who's to really truly say how that's going to be? Every time we think we're truly out of this, there's another variant, and now people talk about monkeypox and the latest thing that's coming along. So it's really hard to say. But I can tell you that what our COVID policy is for this year. And it's all very clearly spelled out on our Shore Leave website. I urgently recommend anybody who is hearing my voice today who has any interest in Shore Leave at all to go to our website and view our COVID policy. In order for anybody, and this includes me too, by the way, we in the committee are not exempt from this rule. Everybody has to show proof of complete vaccination. Okay? So your copy of your card, your original card on your smartphone, anything like that shows proof that you were vaccinated, okay? You need to do that first. There'll be a special area set up out in front of the hotel or as immediately as you go into the hotel. You'll be given an armband. From there, you'll be able to go to our registration areas and sign in the usual way, okay? Now, as far as interaction with people, I really don't know what to expect. As soon as word came down last fall that we were going to go live again, First of all, I nearly jumped 6 feet in the air. I was so excited because I missed shore leave so much. And I think a lot of people did do something very akin to that when word came down.
Indeed, indeed, yes.
But at that point, I had figured that we were almost out of it at the time, the pandemic, I mean. So my feeling was that we were going to fill the place up immediately, no problem. People, hey, we haven't seen each other in 3 years. We're going to have the largest fandom reunion the world's ever seen, and 50 comments like that. 50 because I'm the one who kept using it all over and over again. It may not be the most original line, but it's what I could think of at the moment. Anyway, so that is what I figured was going to happen. But now that continues to drag on, it's very difficult to say what to expect come next week. Now, there are certain precautions we are taking besides the confirming that everybody's fully vaccinated. We are not requiring that everyone wear a mask. We will still recommend it, especially those who are older, our older fans, and those who may have a weakened or compromised immune system. We still recommend that to wear masks. Also, I think some of our guests, not all, okay, are going to be wearing masks where they may have like a plexiglass partition. We usually don't have that at shore leave. That's going to feel very strange because, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, we really pride ourselves on the connection between fan to fan and fan to guest. But hey, you also have to take certain, you have to do what you have to do these days to secure safety. So, even though that might be a little bit inconvenient, I don't think anybody would be upset about it. They're just happy that we're having a show at all in person once again. So, yeah, there are those guests that are going to be having a partition. I'm not quite sure how this is going to be handled as far as our photo opportunities, because those photo opportunities are still going ahead, because some are going to want partitions and some are going to be wearing masks. So we only really know for sure how comfortable people are in their interreactions with each other once shore leave is underway.
Absolutely.
Shore leave and other fan run cons are places where, especially on the beginning of the convention on Friday, you see a lot of hugging, you see a lot of glad handing, you see a lot of shaking hands, fist bumping, all of that. Because let's face it, it's friends who have not seen each other maybe for a full year. This is their chance to get back together with them again. So how people will feel this year, it's going to be very hard to say until it actually happens. But I do know that everybody is extremely excited to see each other and be able to, to meet in person once again. Like I said some time ago, it's been 3 years, but it seems like 30 to a lot of people because, I have to give all the credit in the world to our technical team for pulling off shore leave 41.5 and 41.6 last year. The first virtual convention 2 years ago was very much a dry run. There was only a few bits of programming on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But last year, they really went, way above and beyond what anybody expected. Pretty much anything that you could do virtually, was completed at last year's show. We even had 3 of our guest stars that agreed to appear virtually. And by the way, all 3 of those are among our special guests this year too. So they must have enjoyed themselves. So they all agreed to come back live. So, so I'm very, very pleased to announce that. But who's to say the way it's actually going to be? But I sure hope that people are not afraid when the time comes. But it's good that we've taken certain precautions. And basically, I feel as long as everybody, keeps washing their hands and, just exercises a little common sense, I think everything ought to be all right. It should not really dampen the proceedings in any way. At least that's what we're very hopeful of.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you so much for carving out some time to talk about shore leave. Look forward to being there in person next week.